we're being asked to tell you about they're showing a lot of countries in Africa, and I was like Jesus, but no, I guess I got it. No, they're not. Wait, okay. Well, I mean, it's just that also like Nelson Mandela. I mean, the fact that this would be the topic, like Nelson Mandela just passed, like that it's on TV, that this would be the time to say that. Okay, it would say this. What's happening in Africa is being so hold on, like the dumbest thing to do is like speak of this is happening on a whole continent. So like you can talk about a whole continent. Now the one thing, okay, obviously the history of colonial, I mean the history of it, but what's happening right now is this, that billions of, first of all, they don't have, okay, look, people are the death toll from AIDS and preventable diseases, okay, let's just take that, like, is as though there's it's like a holocaust of like an entire continent, there's the amount, but they're preventable diseases, but they're also, it's also AIDS. But here's what this is just one thing. Our multi-billion-dollar like pharmaceutical corporations have been approached by people who represent essentially the African people who are desperate and desperately poor and dying of AIDS, and saying, look, you can sell all these different drugs that actually but first of all, vaccines that would prevent preventable diseases, but also like AIDS medication, and you refuse to accept responsibility for the fact that you do make billions of dollars in the industrialized countries, one with obviously with medications, but the people there are dying, but there is no attempt made by these billion-dollar pharmaceutical industries to provide anything in the way of medication, including for preventable diseases. As though people in a place where people are just starving all over the continent and little kids are dying of preventable diseases, like, you think of anything a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company could do, and that's not, well, they can't pay, is actually the position. Like how you're letting a continent, like, okay, that's like one kind of thing that's happening I'm aware of. Also, I know that things like Shell Oil and things like any other resource extraction is making billions of dollars off, like, they don't mind like that degree of abject poverty and people like young babies dying of preventable diseases, children dying. They're like fine, like doing multi-billion-dollar business, like extracting oil in Nigeria while that's happening around them. That's why there's piracy. Those pirates are like, they're not pirates. I mean, they're in boats. They're hijacking Shell oil tankers. Rightly so. I mean, rightly so, and I mean, they're going of their whole. That's why you find out like Shell oil tankers, like the people were held hostage. They should be for what? How could they do it? Like you're. It's not just like that they're exploiting the resources. Is that they're doing it business and they're not. That's their resources to the extent that that's in Africa, and certainly the idea that none of the billions of dollars of profit being made off it is that is their resources. How could they let all children starve all over the continent and not share with that? I mean, share in some way, building villages for these people. I mean, like the idea that just letting everyone starve and die of preventable diseases while they're doing that. The other thing is that they have a water shortage crisis that involves people having to walk 5 miles with 2 buckets and get water out of like these pumps. That's like the best, the sort of more like Peace Corps people, like they install a pump in the ground, but like that's not that's not a solution to the water crisis. But there are even solutions that involve having to put money into the pump, because there are the people who are tasked with handling the water shortage are people who perceive that, like, it costs a lot of money to install all these pumps, so therefore, like, the people have to pay. That's, it costs us a tremendous amount of money to bring these pumps. Like, how could you look at it like that? Poor people are like, that's one reason they're dying of dysentery, is that, like, there's no clean water, but the people installing pumps and attempting to bring water there, their version of development involves things like, well, you see, you'll get a card in your village. That card, you'll put money on it and put it in the pump, and then you can get your bucket of water. They don't have money to give, like, a multi-billion-dollar corporation that can do that, and the excuse the corporation gives is, well, this is an incredibly expensive operation we have going. I mean, water costs money. I mean, okay, so what they're doing, of course, naturally, is they're saying, well, we'll hook. I mean, they're doing all kinds of things to try to get water with, like, people, like, hook up. I mean, they do a bunch of things but they can't get water. How do you let people die of thirst and claim, well, we're the ones who can come in and install a pump that the villagers have to walk that far to get? They have no clean water, mostly from pollution. That's why there's so many children dying of dysentery. You can't pay for this, like, privatized pumping system that they somehow think, like, poor, like, desperately starving Africans could pay for. So the only other option is to, like, walk 3 miles and get water that you will get dysentery from drinking. It was the drinking water that would give you dysentery, because it's polluted by corporations like Shell, extracting resources, doing all kinds of things. They're actually devastating and sort of genociding a continent that because of this behavior, like, doesn't have any water. I mean, it's so desperate that there are people. There's a major organization that's trying to get the UN to acknowledge that water is a human right. That water is a basic human right. That's not accepted as real. The corporate, I mean, how could you do that? These type of things. That's a solution, So that's what's going on, and then naturally, where there's that kind of desperation and poverty, right? You get, I mean, it's a piracy. I mean, they're trying to. I mean, that's one way of taking things into your own hands. But there's a bunch of stuff like that happening. That people, should I not mention the pirate thing? But they're not pirates. I mean, there's not. Their children have, like, flies all over them, and they're taking resources, and they have billions of dollars. Like, they have to give it to they have to give some portion of it to the village. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's so sick. I mean, there's a village right there with starving children who don't have clean water to drink, and right there's a multi-billion-dollar corporation extracting all kinds of resources and not cutting the villagers into some share of the profits. That's why people attack. But I mean, when I say people attack boats, they're always saying that there's, like, terrorism coming to Africa. There's people in boats, like, saying, like, we won't allow you to, we're not going to get the boat out unless you start sharing with the villagers. You're taking our resources, but allowing all these people to starve right next to you, where you're doing your business. How could you not cut them in on the profits when the children are all dying? That's how, that's how corporations are behaving in the continent of Africa. That's the best I could do to explain it. I mean, to say what's happening.